top of the morning, top of the morning. It's like, now, y'all, I'm back with something else. So, I was reading in Romans 1 today. And while I was reading, it was just like the revelation was coming. So, Romans 1:23 says, and instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worship idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So, like, instead of worshiping Jesus, people would rather worship statues. And it's really because people don't want to get up their ways. They rather do what Satan says, which is, we know Satan says, do what thou wilt. And that goes against what God says. And it's actually, and it's just so funny because we know Satan perverts everything. It just perverts free will, because just because we have the choice to do whatever we want, it doesn't make every choice that we do beneficial to us. It doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it true either. Because the truth of the matter is, if it's not Jesus, it is deceit. And Proverbs 16:25 says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And 1 Corinthians 10:23 says, you say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. So yes, we have free will and choice to do whatever we want, but that doesn't mean that everything that we want to do, we should do. And then 1 Corinthians 10:24 says, don't be concerned for your own good, but for the good of others. Like, your testimony is for you, but it's not all for you and about you. It is for others, and your testimony testifies for Jesus being a witness for him. Because it is for, like, it's for you, of course, but it's also for the people that God has called to you and assigned to you to get delivered or get closer to Christ from you. So we don't understand that sometimes the choices that we make don't just affect us, but it affects other people. But when you go with that do what thou wilt, it is a selfish way of living and thinking, and it's just all about you, and it's not about you. So back to Romans 1:24, it says, so God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desire. Verse 28, since they thought it was foolish to acknowledge God, he abandoned them to their foolish thinking and let them do things that should never be done. The result of that is their lives became full of every kind of wickedness, sin, greed, hate, envy, murder, quarreling, deception, malicious behavior, and gossip. Verse 32, they know God's justice required that those who do these things deserve to die, yet they do them anyway. Worse yet, they encourage others to do them. So when you're following this, I want to do what I want, do what thou wilt, want to be your own God, you're creating a life full of evil, and that's exactly what that does, because it lacks a moral compass for the greater good, and it is completely selfish, and it acknowledges nobody else but self. If everybody decides to do what they want to do for themselves, of course the world is going to run a course full of evil, because instead of following peace, which is Jesus, and following love, which is Jesus, people try to create peace and love with deceit, and the result ends in corruption. It ends in evil, and that evil is cancerous. Corruption is cancerous. It just spreads like cancer. It spreads like wildfire. Because if everybody's doing for self, everybody is going to feel like what they're doing is right, and it does not necessarily mean that what you're doing is right, and it is okay. But if you have that mindset of, I want to do what I want, I can do what I want, can't nobody tell me what to do, then what do you think is going to happen? Because somebody could feel like going up and shooting a school for little kids is good. But if everybody is going off of this, I want to do what I want, I can do what I want kind of thing, you can't tell that other person that what they did is wrong if nobody has like a moral compass to follow, or a truth, or a standard. You feel what I'm saying? Catch it. So, for example, I'm just going to use sex because that's the first thing that came to my mind, and that's what Ramos was talking about. Sex is not a bad thing. Sex becomes bad when you do it outside of marriage, outside of God's will, outside of the covenant of marriage. That's when it becomes bad. But what Satan does is he perverts it to just let people, I can have sex to do what I want with who I want and all that. And that's not the truth, and that's not tea. But just because you have free will to go out and have sex outside of marriage, that don't mean that is right. that don't mean that it's good for you or the other person that you're having sex with. And it also don't mean it benefits you, because most people don't know the spiritual consequences that comes from having sex outside of marriage. Because when you're outside of marriage, you're not in covenant, you are not covered. So now you got all these spirits, whatever spirits want to come in, because you gave them legal right to, they coming all up in your life. It could be the spirit of depression, anger, gossip, greed, all these things, every kind of wickedness. Yeah. So just because you have the free will to do something, it don't mean that it's right and it's good and it's beneficial. And the reason God gave us free will is because he loves us. It's just out of love. If he controlled every single thing we did, we would be like robots, and it wouldn't be true love, because we wouldn't be loving him because we chose to. We would be loving him because he told us.